Hi there, Vibe Gardeners. Welcome to another episode of Vibe Gardening Inform Edition. We're going to talk about how to germinate tiny seeds. Now, with that said, let's go. All right, guys. So to ground you guys on what's been going on is that we've gone through a few videos already, where we've gone through a couple of scenarios for germinating seeds, where we have done the traditional, just put in soil and then put it in under a humidity dome and let it go. And then we also had how to germinate heat-loving annual plants up here in the north using heat mat. And now for the final scenario we're going to cover in this playlist course is that we're going to talk about how to germinate tiny seeds. Now, if you've ever germinated tiny seeds, you would know that it feels almost kind of like a high-stake gamble where you're taking seeds that you can barely see or count in your palm, and you're trying to put them into soil and getting them to germinate correctly. But one of the problems with germinating is that you want to put the seed depth in relation to the size of the seed. Tiny seeds are so small, and a lot of them are also light germinated, in that you need to have light hitting the seed to get them to germinate faster. And because of that, a lot of them are sitting on the surface of the soil. So keeping the moisture proper to be able to keep it germinating while being able to get that surface level light assistance makes it extremely challenging. So today I'm going to show you some of the plants that I want to germinate that are tiny. So one of them is going to be my chamomile. This is German chamomile, and if are familiar with essential oil, you'll realize that German chamomile is a more common one. But then you also have, I think Roman is the other type. That's definitely the more precious type. So obviously I'm making tea out of these. I don't really care if it's German or Roman. So another thing here is the notoriously difficult rosemary. I'm also going to try to germinate those as well. And then we also have Thai basil. I've done regular Italian style or Genovese, actually I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, basil before. And you will see how that went. I kind of want to go for the Thai basil so that when I start making fall, I can get the right flavor going. And then finally, I will be also doing oregano. And that is something that I make really good tomato soups out of. And the first time I planted it, I made a massive mistake by exposing its roots in the dead of winter, and that killed it. But it is actually supposed to be perennial in my grow zone. So I want to start from seeds this time, and it should be a good way to show you guys how to plant these tiny seeds appropriately in the soil. All right, guys, so here we are. We have our set of ingredients we need. We have these 4 seeds, and this step is just like the traditional germination and heat mat germination, where we would pack it with soil. And what happened here is I would compress it like I would in the other videos, but instead of putting seeds down and basically covering again with a light tap, I would actually skip the seed and do the layering on of soil, compress it down, put the soil on top again, and lightly tap. So I'm basically doing both soil layering at the same time before putting on in seed, because the seed has to go on top. But we have to make sure the consistency of the compaction is about the same. Another key ingredient I'm going to use are going to be these vermiculite. I'm going to put actually a layer of vermiculite on the bottom. Use a spray bottle to wet it down, and then I'm going to put the seeds on top of vermiculite that's already wetted down. And depending on the seed, so for example, if we look at the instructions here, so this with oregano, it doesn't say anything about requiring a light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually be able to put a somewhat moderate dusting of vermiculite on top. And if you remember from the physiology of seeds and germination, we need water, we need air or oxygen, and we need temperature. And all of these are not requiring high temperature, so we can basically germinate like usual. But again, the vermiculite is going to give it consistent moisture, because vermiculite is really expanded and broken up mineral. It's really, really good in absorbing and then slowly releasing moisture. But it also does not choke air. It lets air through. So this is actually your secret weapon for germinating these tiny seeds. And then, of course, one of the things about these plants, for example, if you look at the chamomile packaging, at the very bottom, it mentions special germination instruction. Light aid germination. Press seed into soil surface. This one, I'm actually going to completely skip vermiculite on top. I'm going to let vermiculite on the bottom of the seeds do all the work. And that way, it's going to make sure that all the light is going to get on there. Even though vermiculite diffuses light, it never blocks it out. I want to be ultra careful and give these seeds the best chance to get germinated. And of course, the rosemary is light aided. It's actually not as critical here in that, though it can go without light, but it definitely gets a lot of help. Because if we look at the days to emerge, it's 15 to 30 days. So this is a good 2 to 4 weeks before this seed will actually germinate. And because of that, it's a good idea to give it that open airness so it doesn't end up getting algae or mold on there that can potentially choke it of air. So that's what I'm going to do, and let's get started. All right, so like I mentioned, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tray here of the soil, and I'm going to get myself a light sprinkling of vermiculite, or not so light sprinkling of vermiculite, right where the seeds will be. Because that way it's going to essentially guarantee a layer of moisture. And you can be liberal here because this is the area where it's not going to be blocking light of any kind because it's at the bottom. And you're going to take your spray bottle, and this is where it's going to get a little messy because vermiculite is like sand. When you spray bottle it, it's going to actually fly a little bit. And that's essentially fine because you keep it away from anything that needs to be stay dry, like the seeds. See how it's making a mess here? And this is why I added a little extra vermiculite at first to make sure that it would actually have enough left after it makes a mess, like this. Give it plenty of water. All right. All right, now for the next step, we're going to be applying the seeds. Now, you were wondering earlier, why did I have the back of my watering tray here for the plants? Well, the reason is that it's a black surface, and that's where we're going to be able to see the seeds the best, because as you can see, here's what the chamomile seeds look like on the inside. It is absolutely tiny. It's like a dust. And if you go on the website for botanical interest, it'll actually say a pinch of seeds. So now what happened here, as you can see, I can actually see what I'm doing now because of the black surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a pinch of it. I'm going to sprinkle some on top, and absolutely you will have to thin out chamomile when the time comes, because there's absolutely too many seeds for the surface area that we're working with. And these guys will essentially choke themselves to death if you let them be. So yeah, kind of put it in there, and like the instructions said, do a lot of light pressing and make sure nothing really sticks to your hand. If it does, just basically rub it off. And this is going to be how we plant chamomile. And absolutely, you want to be labeling these trays when you're done with it, because they're tiny seeds, and especially at first, you have no clue what's in here. So labeling your plant here is going to be ultra important. Don't skip that step or you'll regret it. There we go. All right, so now that we got basil, Thai basil and basil in general is interesting in its recommendation here, in that in the seed spacing, they want you to place a group of 2 seeds every 12 inches, or for me, it's a seed cell. So they want me to put 2 per cell. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to end up using my tweezer I have here. I'm going to put 2 of them per cell. And yes, picking up these seeds are not easy. I think I got one, but I might have broken it. Yeah, it's not the easiest thing. So once you put it in here, as usual, you want to press it in and make sure it doesn't stick to your finger. And you want to also thin this out when the time comes. Now, the interesting thing about basil is that because it is light aided, so it doesn't have to be fully dark to germinate basil. What we can do here, we can take our container of vermiculite, and when we say light dusting, this is generally what I'm talking about here, in that it's not heavy. It's basically 1 pinch can serve 2 or 3 cells, depends on how big your pinch are. And that's all you want to do. You basically want to, press in your vermiculite from the top as well to give a nice little compaction. And then just spray your vermiculite. I'm going to do a little further away to make it less of a mess. And that press should also help it. And this right here basically makes sure that you're essentially getting it nice and wet from both the top and bottom. And that's going to give it the most wetness that you can in the situation, because you want it to be near the top to get the light, and you want to give it decent moisture as the time comes, so throughout without drowning it. So there you go. We have now Thai basil. All right, guys, so this is the final product here. I'm using one of those larger humidity dome and seed trays here to be able to store everything that I need in here. But how much I'm germinating, it makes a lot more sense for me to put everything in a tray like this. And so that way I'm going to be able to conserve everything in one spot and be able to just basically come here every once in a while and spray it. You can see I got 2 celery trays. I got my Thai basil, chamomile, rosemary, and oregano here. And especially the rosemary and the celery, these things have 2 to 4 week germination timeline. And so it's going to be a while, but hopefully this is all going to come out great. And I will post updates on these things in my shorts. All right, guys, so that concludes my episode on how to plant tiny seeds. And hopefully that gives you guys a good idea of how I was able to use vermiculite to be able to guarantee consistent, even moisture while being able to give oxygen to these seeds. And for those who are more light hungry to be able to germinate properly, I actually skipped the top layer of vermiculite completely. And I hope that takes some of the guesswork and the gamble out of being able to plant your tiny seeds. And I hope that helps you quite a bit. If you got a better technique, you got some tips that you think I missed, please comment below and subscribe to get more updates on how these guys germinate. All right? So keep gardening and keep vibing. Let's go.